following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or another print disability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, just visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org. Now, welcome to you, the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We now present a reading of articles and features from our USA Today for Tuesday, January the 13th of 2026. And your readers today are Jody
and Alan Blackburn.
And I'm going to start you right out on our front page. My first article is The Politics of 2026 Lurching to the Edges. Both parties are struggling to cling to the center. Consider yourself warned. The politics of 2026 will not be for the faint of heart. With Americans increasingly dissatisfied with their government and the direction of the country, policy prescriptions once considered on the fringe are becoming part of the mainstream debate. Take over Greenland, anyone? Open government-run grocery stores? This year's midterm elections will test efforts by the emboldened to pull both parties to their edges. Consider President Donald Trump's determination to end birthright citizenship, undoing a tenet with roots that date back to 1790, and his military incursion this month to take charge of Venezuela and its oil reserves. He hasn't budged from his belief in stiff tariffs as an economic elixir, at odds with what, until his political ascension, was Republican orthodoxy. As for the Democrats' newest star, New York Mayor Zohran Mamdani has vowed to tax the rich, freeze 1 million rents, offer universal child care, and arrest Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu for war crimes if he ventures into Gotham. Now, the midterms will help shape the debate that will follow in the 2028 presidential election. But it does seem fair to ask, will the center hold in either party? Americans are increasingly gloomy about where things stand now, and their divisions over what to do about it are deepening. So, political norms are by the wayside. This is a recipe for political disruption that defies classic lines between Republicans and Democrats, and between conservatives and liberals, particularly among younger voters who have less history with and allegiance to either party. In a national poll released in November, 52% of likely voters who are aged 18 to 39 had a favorable impression of Mamdani. Of those who voted for Trump in 24, 41% of those liked Mamdani too. A majority of the under 40 voters, including conservatives and moderates, supported the idea of extending Mamdani's proposal for government-run grocery stores to every town in America to help reduce the rising cost of food. Yet another pivotal November. This year's midterms, they are poised to be a pivot point for America's politics and its parties. In the decade since Trump announced his White House campaign, he has recast the GOP in his image, upending long-standing views on trade, budget deficits, and military alliances. His political loyalists are viewed as his likely successors, VP J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio at the lead. But the Republican Party has begun to envision a future after the 79-year-old Trump, one in which his grip will presumably loosen. The Democratic Party is looking to the post-Trump era too, with divisions that are considerably more public. Does the stamp of the Democratic socialism, already under attack as radical by the GOP, undermine the Democrats' aspiration to regain control of the House of Representatives, a low bar, and even the Senate, a high one, in the midterms that are 10 months away? Or do voters deliver a rebuke to Trump's assertions of raw power on everything, from curbing immigration to deploying troops in American cities, steps blasted by the Democrats as dangerous authoritarianism? Just keep your eyes on November.
Florida citrus is under siege by a tiny invader. Citrus was a cornerstone of the Florida's economy and identity for more than a century, but a decades-long decline by an invasive predator and relentless hurricanes leave some wondering if the industry can ever recover. Citrus was once a behemoth in the state with nearly 1 million acres of trees. Today it grows on fewer than 200,000 acres. Production has plummeted by nearly 92% since the season before a trio of hurricanes made landfall in 2004. In the winter 24-25, production reached the lowest point in more than a century. In early 2025, the state's largest commercial grower announced it would end its citrus operations in Florida, citing economic conditions. However, many growers and scientists aren't ready to close the book on Florida's citrus industry. They are fighting back against the voracious Asian citrus psyllid, a tiny sap-sucking insect, and the tree-killing disease known as citrus greening, caused by the bacteria that pest carries. Through breeding and genetics, researchers and growers have developed trees showing tremendous resistance, if not tolerance, to greening. Florida growers have seen troubles before, including pests and disease such as canker, which still lingers, and historic tree-killing freezes. But the Asian citrus psyllid is considered the gravest threat to citrus trees and fruit worldwide. The particularly devastating strain of the disease the insect spreads, Huanglong Bing, or HLB, caused by the bacterium Candidatus liberibacter asiaticus, has affected dozens of countries. It's found in several states, but Florida has been hit hardest. The bugs, which are barely an eighth of an inch long, arrived in the state in 1998 and were detected in the commercial citrus industry in 2005. Since then, they've wreaked havoc. We have had a 90% reduction in acreage and production compared with pre-HLB. During the 24-25 season, growers produced 14.6 million field boxes, down more than 25% from the previous year. It had been 125 years since production was that low. At its height, the industry produced 304 million boxes a season. The scientists blame the extent of the infection in part on Florida's heat and rain, which encourages the new growth insects prefer to eat, hurricanes that move the bugs into new areas, and delays to eradicate the psyllids from the moment they first appeared in South Florida. They operate like malaria-carrying mosquitoes, taking disease from infected trees to healthy ones. When the bacteria hits a tree, it spreads everywhere, not just in the leaves or on the surface. Growers are working with scientists to develop promising treatments and tools. That includes working with hundreds of varieties of trees and fruit to develop trees with a hardier root systems and treetops. They're also 3 years into applying a treatment to curb the bacterial infection. They're expanding acres grown under protective screen structures that keep out the psyllids. Other advances include helping trees produce a protein that can kill the young psyllids. So one of the things they're doing is growing them under trees under a screen protective structure designed to keep the bugs out. The Belvacqua has opened Golden Ridge in November to tours and U-pick opportunities. It's a way to bring citrus sciences. Growers have seen big collateral benefits to the screen structures. Protected from wind and to some degree from the sun, the trees grow far faster in the humid environment than those outside the screen, and they also produce more and higher quality fruit. They're much more efficient in what they do on an acre basis.
And here's your page one cover story. The justices are finally going to hear trans athletes' case. Can trans girls compete on female sports team? And they have a picture. You can see a young girl looking very happy. She's long hair. She's sitting in her kitchen and her mom's behind her. Their phone's on the table. And it reads high school student Becky Pepper Jackson. Here's her, and she's here in the picture with her mother, Heather Jackson, behind her. She challenged a West Virginia law barring transgender girls from participating on female sports teams. Becky Pepper Jackson was in elementary school, already sure she was a girl despite being designated a male at birth, when the nation took notice of two transgender athletes. Now, the debate over whether the high school runners in Connecticut had an unfair advantage ricocheted around the country, prompting more than half the states to block transgender girls from competing on female teams. Now, in Pepper Jackson's home state of West Virginia, lawmakers have reasonably expected that mounting stories of transgender athletes outperforming competitors because they're bigger, faster, and stronger would soon reach their communities, the officials have said. It's so demeaning to women. The two sides, they may vehemently disagree over the phenomenon that West Virginia and 26 other states say they are addressing, but there's no question that the issue, it has seized national attention. Pepper Jackson's lawsuit and another student's challenge to Idaho's ban are among the most significant cases the High Court will be deciding this year. President Donald Trump's opposition to transgender women competing on female teams, that was a centerpiece of his 24 campaign, and he's counting on the policy stance as a key issue in helping Republicans maintain control of Congress in the fall's midterm elections. The whole thing is ridiculous, and it's so demeaning to women, Trump has said when he mocked transgender athletes during a recent speech to House Republicans. Transgender athlete wants to drop her challenge. Now, Lindsay Haycox, she's a transgender student at Boise State University. She convinced the lower courts to temporarily block enforcement of Idaho's ban. Now, she wants to abandon her case. In September, Haycox said she is no longer playing sports and has asked the Supreme Court to let her drop her challenge. Haycox said she's afraid that she will be harassed and then she will have trouble graduating if this high-profile lawsuit does continue. Transgender rights are boosted by the 2020 Supreme Court decision. Now, despite the headwinds, transgender right advocates, they hope to build on their surprise 2020 victory when the court sided with 3 employees who were fired because they were gay or transgender. A 6-3 majority ruled that when the Civil Rights Act of 1964 barred workplace discrimination on the basis of sex, that also covered sexual orientation and gender identity. Pepper Jackson's lawyers argue the same reasoning should be applied to the section of the Civil Rights Act barring sex discrimination in educational programs, Title IX. Debate over the Constitution's Equal Protection Clause. The justices will also debate whether Idaho's and West Virginia's laws violate the 14th Amendment's guarantee that laws will be applied equally to people in similar situations. State officials argue that transgender females are not the same as people who are assigned female at birth, so it is reasonable to treat them differently in athletic programs. The lower courts sided with the transgender students. Lower courts sided with transgender students at earlier ages of litigation, ruling that they were exempt from the bans as the challenges had continued. After hearing from experts on both sides about the effects of hormone therapy, a federal judge in Idaho found it more likely that Haycox did not have a physical advantage. But the judge said a trial would be necessary to fully assess that scientific evidence. A plan to push transgender people like me out of public life. Pepper Jackson, who has lived publicly as a girl since the 4th grade, takes puberty-delaying medication and estrogen. Now, still, West Virginia argues that Pepper Jackson retained a physical advantage that helped her place 3rd in a state discus-throwing competition and 8th in the shot put last year. But Pepper Jackson just attributes her athletic achievements to hard work and practice. She says her case is not just about sports, but it's a part of a plan to push transgender people like me right out of the public life entirely. Non-transgender athletes, they speak out about lost opportunities. The court has also heard from students who have competed against transgender athletes, arguing that they have lost opportunities and also feared for their safety. Selena Sewell, who ran high school track in Connecticut, said in a filing that she missed qualifying for a 55-meter race by 2 spots, while the 2 biologically male competitors who sparked that national debate that led to the state bans, they made the cut. Although Sewell qualified in other events at the regional championship, she said she has lost an opportunity to impress the college scouts. She felt deep distress, believing her effort and competitive strength as a female athlete, it was undercut by biologically male competitors with natural physiological advantages. Now that's a feeling echoed by other female athletes in her shoes, Sewell's attorney wrote in a filing. Trans athlete says her moderate success was overplayed. Andrea Yearwood, one of the 2 transgender athletes Sewell had complained about, said her moderate success as a runner, it was overemphasized by the media, fueling the bans like Idaho's and West Virginia's. Unlike girls she ran against in high school, Yearwood told the court in a filing opposing the bans that she was not recruited to run track at college. But still, she said competing on the track team gave her confidence and purpose. Respectfully, her attorneys wrote, Miss Yearwood asked the court to preserve that opportunity for other transgender girls.
You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 12:14. Trump considers a second floor for the West Wing. President Donald Trump is exploring the construction of a second story for the White House's West Wing colonnade to balance the building's height with a feature ballroom and other additions on the East Wing. The ballroom's lead architect, Shalom Baranes, said on January 8th that the White House is considering a modest one-story addition to the West Wing colonnade. He said it would serve to restore a sense of symmetry with the East Wing. It is designed to include an expanded 2-story colonnade connecting the White House's East Room to the ballroom. Baranes said the expanded West Wing colonnade would be the same height as the White House's main historic building, which was protected during the recent demolition of the old East Wing. The ballroom's north end would be about 60 feet high, the same height as the White House mansion, and painted the same white color. Baranas, hired by Trump to lead the project in December, discussed the concept before a Capital Planning Commission. The panel formally reviewed conceptual plans of Trump's ballroom project for the first time. The heights will match exactly. The West Wing colonnade, which was built in 1902 under President Theodore Roosevelt, connects the White House executive residence with White House offices located in the West Wing. It is flanked by the Rose Garden on one side and the James A. Brady press briefing room on the other. Trump surprised reporters in August when he took a stroll atop the West Wing colonnade with his former ballroom architect. Baranas said the ballroom's project overall footprint would be 89,000 square feet, but the ballroom itself would be about 22,000 square feet. He said the ballroom, which would have walls between 30 and 40 feet high, would hold 1,000 guests. The ballroom will include a grand stair leading to a foyer and have space for food service, a loading dock, and waste handling. The revamped East Wing is set to include a new First Lady's suite after the First Lady's offices were displaced during the demolition, as well as a new movie theater. The White House plans to submit more advanced ballroom designs to the Commission, which acts as a Washington Central Planning Agency at a future meeting. It's unclear how the Commission will vote on the plans. Trump wants the ballroom to open before his term ends in January 2029. He has vowed to use private donations to pay for the project, which has a price tag of $400 million, which is up from the $250 million the president originally projected. The Commission, which consists of several Trump appointees, seems largely receptive about the ballroom's plans, despite the controversy surrounding it. The National Trust for Historic Preservation filed a lawsuit in December aimed at blocking its construction. Commissioner Philip Mendelson, who chairs the District of Columbia City Council, expressed hesitation. "I'm concerned about this addition overwhelming the original historic building," Mendelson said. "It sounds to me that the height could be lowered without jeopardizing the footprint." Linda Argo, another commissioner, said, "I have some concern with the size and scale in a number of ways, but we can talk more about that as the design and work on this progresses." Asked whether this ballroom's height could be reduced, Baranas said, "It's possible, not impossible." Will Scharf, the White House staff secretary who chairs the commission, called the board's first formal glance at the ballroom plans the beginning of a process. Reiterating the case Trump has made, Scharf said the ballroom is needed to host large formal events attended by world leaders that currently takes place under tents on the South Lawn. "That to me is not a good look for the United States of America," Scharf said. And I think that when you think about the long history of planning for a state ballroom on the White House grounds, if you think about the number of times this project has been suggested historically, it speaks to that programmatic need.
Maduro's defense could claim immunity. The captured Venezuelan leader, he does have legal options. Captured Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro's declaration in a New York federal courtroom on January 5th that he is still president of his country. That might have sounded like a political statement, but it turns out it's also a legal defense. The imprisoned leader's lawyer, Barry Pollock, said in court that the defense team will be arguing Maduro is immune from criminal charges as the head of a foreign government. It's one of a series of defenses Maduro could raise to try to quash the charges before any trial takes place, according to the criminal defense lawyers who spoke with USA Today. Now, those include saying Maduro was illegally abducted and that President Donald Trump is targeting him vindictively. So here are 6 different ways that Maduro could fight these charges and why each strategy comes with challenges. The first one is Maduro immune as Venezuela's leader? Maduro isn't the first foreign leader to argue that his American charges should be thrown out because he's a country's head of state. Manuel Noriega, a former Panama general, he made the same argument after he was captured by U.S. forces and faced charges of drug trafficking and money laundering. Noriega wasn't formally elected as the president of Panama, but he was widely regarded as the country's actual leader directing actions of puppet presidents. However, that argument failed for Noriega. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the 11th Circuit ruled in 1997 that he wasn't immune from prosecution under the immunity provided to heads of state because the U.S. executive branch of government manifested its clear sentiment that he wasn't entitled to such immunity when it pursued his capture and prosecuted him. And the next one is illegal capture. Pollock, Maduro's defense lawyer, also said at the January 5th proceedings that he expects a legal fight over Maduro's military abduction, seeming to suggest that the defense will challenge how Maduro was captured. That argument, however, it failed for Noriega. And vindictive and selective prosecution. Maduro could also argue that he's being vindictively and selectively prosecuted and that the charges should therefore be thrown out. The two defenses deal with the government retaliating against defendants for exercising their legal right or singling out defendants based on protected characteristics or activity like race or political work. Ehrenberg expects Maduro to point out Trump's pardon of the former Honduran president Juan Orlando Hernandez, whom prosecutors said helped to bring more than 400 tons of cocaine into the U.S. Hernandez was a conservative politician, whereas Maduro is a socialist. He got a pardon because Trump liked his politics, Ehrenberg said. Now you have someone who's accused of trafficking and is facing criminal charges because Trump doesn't like his politics. Outrageous conduct. Maduro could also argue that his case should be dismissed because the government has engaged in outrageous conduct or conduct that shocks the conscience. This type of challenge falls under the Constitution's protections for due process. Epner said Maduro might make a version of this argument that focuses on his belief about why he was taken from his own country. Challenge prosecution's evidence. If Maduro's case makes it to trial, his legal team will almost surely seek to poke holes in the evidence and the testimony the prosecution puts on. You can be sure that the defense at some point will raise criticisms of the key witnesses against Hernandez to say, if the president says do not believe the witnesses against Hernandez, why should we then believe similar witnesses against Maduro, they said. Now, seeking a presidential pardon. Then there's always the possibility that Maduro tries to change his relationship with the Trump administration, which has the power to drop the charges and even permanently shield him from a federal criminal case with a pardon. Ehrenberg thinks that's unlikely, however, even if Trump has shown a willingness to grant pardons to an array of criminal defendants since retaking office in January. He noted that Secretary of State Marco Rubio has long been critical of Maduro's government. I do think the most powerful person in the White House when it comes to the mission is Marco Rubio, and he has always been a hawk when it comes to American intervention in Latin America, Ehrenberg said. I can't imagine that all it takes is Maduro to say some nice words and then he's set free, he added.
Powell, Federal Chairman Jerome Powell, has been hit with the Department of Justice subpoenas. The chairman also cites an indictment threat. Federal Chairman Jerome Powell said that the threat is pressure to cut rates. Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell said on January 11th that the Department of Justice served the central bank with subpoenas and threatened it with a criminal indictment over congressional testimony he provided last summer about a federal building renovation project. In a video statement, Powell called the threat of criminal charges a pretext aimed at putting pressure on the Fed to lower interest rates. The move marks a significant escalation in President Donald Trump's fight with the independent central bank and Powell, in which the president has repeatedly attacked over his leadership. I have deep respect for the rule of law and for accountability in our democracy, said Powell. No one, certainly not the chair of the Federal Reserve, is above the law. But this unprecedented action should be seen in the broader context of the administration's threats and ongoing pressure. Since returning to the White House in early 2025, Trump has demanded the Fed slash interest rates and blamed its policy for holding back the economy. Trump has also expressed eagerness to fire Powell, whose term as chair expires in May. Powell has previously ignored Trump's criticisms and actions, but his comments on January 11th marked a turning point as he directly accused the Trump administration of using the legal system to try to influence federal policy. This new threat is not about my testimony last June or about the renovation of the Federal Reserve buildings. It's not about Congress's oversight role. Those are pretexts, Powell said. The threat of criminal charges is a consequence of the Federal Reserve setting interest rates based on our best assessment of what will serve the public, rather than following the preferences of the president. Republican Senator Thom Tillis, a member of the Senate Banking Committee that vets presidential nominees for the Fed, said the threat of criminal charges puts the Department of Justice's independence and credibility in question. If there were any remaining doubt whether advisors within the Trump administration are actively pushing to end the independence of the Federal Reserve, there should now be none, Tillis said. I will oppose the confirmation of any nominee for the Fed, including the upcoming Fed chair vacancy, until this legal matter is fully resolved. Trump told NBC News on January 11th that he had no knowledge of the Justice Department's actions. I don't know anything about it. He's certainly not very good, but he's certainly not very good at the Fed, said Trump.
Minnesota braces for hundreds more federal agents. Nome orders a surge in the wake of Good's death. Hundreds more federal agents are being sent to Minnesota, the Trump administration said, as the furor grows over that fatal shooting of the 37-year-old woman by a U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement officer. Now, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem announced the surge in an interview on Fox News' Sunday Morning Futures. We're sending more officers today and tomorrow, she said January 11th. They'll arrive. There'll be hundreds more in order to allow our ICE and our Border Patrol individuals that are working in Minneapolis to do that safely. The deployments come amid nationwide protests over the killing of Renee Nicole Good, and more than a month after federal authorities began sending agents to Minnesota as part of an operation targeting those undocumented immigrants and fraud in the state's social services programs. The January 7th shooting, which was caught on video, immediately sparked backlash against Trump's administration's immigration enforcement and has deepened divisions between federal and state authorities. The federal government says the agent acted in self-defense. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and others say he acted recklessly. Now, footage shows multiple agents approach Good's SUV, which was stopped in the middle of the street. One officer tries to open the driver's side door as someone is heard yelling at her to get out of the car. Then Good briefly reverses before driving forward, then begins to turn right away from the agents. Now, as the vehicle moves forward, an officer standing near the front driver's side, he draws his gun and fires 3 times at close range. Noem, in several interviews on January 11th, defended the ICE agent, Jonathan Ross, and accused Good of domestic terrorism. Video analysis by USA Today shows Good's vehicle appeared to be turning away from the officer who had fired on her. In the first week of January, the Department of Homeland Security announced a surge of 2,000 agents into Minneapolis and St. Paul as part of the administration's deportation agenda and to investigate fraud. Federal officials describing the deployment called it the largest immigration operation ever. The fraud investigations were launched after President Donald Trump seized on cases in Minneapolis, calling out Walz and going after the state's Somali community. Since 2022, federal prosecutors have charged more than 80 people in the schemes. Many of them are U.S. citizens of Somali descent. Officials have not said how long the federal deployment would last. The Department of Homeland Security said last week that it has arrested 1,500 undocumented immigrants since it launched Operation Metro Surge on December 1st. Now, over the weekend, hundreds of people turned out for protests in Minneapolis. Though most of them remained peaceful, occasional flare-ups saw federal agents deploy pepper spray and tear gas. Videos also show federal agents, including the Border Patrol officers, making immigration-related arrests.
You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 12:28. And it's on to the money section. Job market rise closes a volatile year. The economy added 50,000 jobs in December. American employers added 50,000 jobs in December, falling short of some analysts' expectations and capping off a volatile year for the U.S. job market. Last year was marked by relatively strong and steady job growth in the first few months, followed by a noticeable cooling starting in May, with multiple months showing net job losses after revisions. In December, the unemployment rate declined to 4.4%, down from 4.6% in November, and November's rate was the highest rate since September of 2021. Payroll gains for October were revised down by 68,000. Payroll gains from November were also revised down by 8,000, indicating the labor market was weaker at the end of 2025 than initially estimated. The data provides a mixed but concerning close to 2025, according to some partners in a portfolio management group. The labor market's resilience is being tested. In the coming months will be critical in determining whether this is a late cycle slowdown or a prelude to something more persistent. Payroll employment rose by 584,000 in 2025, down from an increase of 2 million in 2024. Employment, which industries are hiring? Employment in food and drinking places drove payroll gains in December, adding 27,000 jobs. Healthcare continued to grow, adding 21,000, and social assistance sector added 17,000. On the other hand, retail trade shed 25,000 jobs in December. Capping a year characterized by mass layoffs, the federal government added 2,000 jobs. Since January 2025, federal government employment is down by 277,000. Employment was little changed in other major industries in December, including manufacturing, construction, and transportation. Most consumers aren't confident they could land a job. Americans weren't optimistic about their ability to land a job in 2026, according to the New York Fed's December 2025 survey. Respondents' perceived probability of finding a job if they lost their own fell to 43% in December, the lowest level since the survey began in 2013. It marked the second record low in 6 months. In August, respondents gave themselves a 44.9% chance of finding a job if they lost their current one. How is the job market overall? Non-government reports tell a slightly more optimistic story. According to the ADP National Employment Report, private sector employers added 41,000 jobs in December. While the labor market is still arguably in a low hire, low fire mode, it does look in our data as though the worst of the slowdown is behind us, said David Tinsley, a senior economist at Bank of America Institute. A Challenger Gary and Christmas report for the same month found the U.S.-based employers added 35,000 job cuts, the lowest level in 17 months and down 50% from the 71,000 announced in November. In total, employers announced 1.2 million job cuts in 2025, a 58% increase from 2024 and the highest annual total since 2020. Trump posted some jobs data before its official release. On January 8th, the evening before the jobs official released, President Donald Trump posted a graph on Truth Social showing changes in private and government employment since 2025. When the full report was released, it was clear to outside observers the chart that Trump shared had incorporated what were then unreleased December numbers. Speaking to reporters at a meeting with oil executives January 9th, Trump said, "I don't know if they posted them." I said, "Post them whenever you get a chance." He continued adding, when people give me things, I post them. Following a regular procedure of presidents being pre-briefed on economic data release, there was inadvertent public disclosure of aggregate data that was partially derived from pre-released information. The White House is accordingly reviewing protocols regarding economic data release. A new way to track the labor market? The day before they released the job reports, the Federal Reserve Bank launched a new quarter and monthly index that will help guide monetary policy. The HPW Labor Market Tightness Index summarizes current wage pressures and forecasts near-term wage inflation based on the quits rate and job vacancy per job seeker. Well, the Fed cut rates in January. After the Federal Reserve's 3 consecutive cuts to its benchmark interest rate, most forecasters don't expect the December job reports to prompt another rate cut at the Fed Open Market Committee meetings at the end of January. Analysts broadly predict the committee will hold off on further cuts to give prior reductions time to work their way through the economy. The morning of January 9th, the CME Federal Watch tool, which tracks the likelihood for a federal rate move at each Fed meeting, showed an 88% chance the Fed would leave its rate change steady at 3.75%.
And Lottery Winner's Choice, it sets off a debate. A Canadian who's 20, she takes the annuity over the lump sum. A 20-year-old Canadian lit up social media after she won the lottery in the summer of 2025 and chose to accept her winnings in an annuity and rather than a lump sum. Now, instead of taking a tax-free lump sum of $1 million, Canadian lottery wins aren't taxed like U.S. Brenda Aubin Vega of Quebec chose to receive $1,000 a week for her life. Now, her decision contrasts with what the vast majority of lottery winners choose, and it also drew some criticism. Lump sum versus annuity. Before you decide on how to receive their prize, winners should understand what the two options are. First, there's the lump sum. It's a one-time cash payment, usually the cash value of the jackpot. And there's an annuity. That's a regular stream of payments over time, either for a certain number of years or for life. Mega Millions and Powerball, those are the two largest U.S. lotteries, They pay the annuity with an annual payment over 30 years that increases each year by 5%. And to many people, the lump sum, it's a no-brainer. Many people on social media believe the lump sum is always better because the winner can invest the money and then it will grow more quickly than an annuity, they say. But that strategy, it could be riskier than just taking those automatic annual increase in lottery annuity payments, some advisors have said, because the stock market can post losses for multiple years at a time. Annuity is a smarter option, that's according to researchers. Researchers of the 2011 report, they argued that it's usually more financially advantageous to choose an annuity, mostly because of the double taxations of lump sums brings in the U.S. And then additionally, annuity takers receive a higher present value payout over the life of the annuity than the lump sum payment counterparts. So, which option is right? Now, ultimately, the choice is personal, advisors have said. When you're deciding, here's what to consider. First is health and age. If you're 65 years old and you get $52,000 a year, it'll take about 20 years for you to reach $1 million. So you should probably take the lump sum. That would allow the winner to spend and distribute the money as they see fit while they're still alive. And there's risk tolerance and goals. How comfortable are you in investing or potentially losing some money versus having that guaranteed income? And they say the type of person you are. Are you a spendthrift or are you financially disciplined? Winning the jackpot can be exhilarating, but smart financial planning, that makes all the difference between a fleeting thrill and long-term security, says Lauren Weibar, who's a senior wealth executive at Vanguard. Before making a big decision, she says, take a moment to reflect on your short-term and long-term goals. Then bring in trusted advisors to help you develop a plan to maximize your winnings. And then they have a big picture, and you can see the lottery winner holding one of those big, beautiful checks, and she's smiling. There's confetti in the picture, and it shows her holding a big check. It says Leanne West. She steps forward back in 2018. She claimed a $343.9 million Powerball jackpot. That was the largest prize back then in Iowa history.
Parents aren't ready to talk inheritance with children. America's adult children say they are ready to manage that inheritance now. Their parents might disagree. A report from Fidelity Investments sheds new light on an estate planning generation gap. Aging parents might not think their adult children are ready to hear about the assets they will eventually inherit, let alone take charge of that wealth. The retirement industry is abuzz with the talk of a great wealth transfer, with an estimated $84 trillion passing from older Americans to their heirs by 2045. But wealthy elders aren't in a big hurry to discuss those plans with the kids. Some don't think their children and grandchildren are ready for a conversation. Others find the topic unpalatable. There's an uncomfortableness about talking about money and death, said Cody Molachek, a certified financial planner at Northwestern Mutual's Freedom Wealth Advisors. You're waiting for the perfect moment to have that talk, and it just never arrives. Nearly every American thinks it's important for families to talk about estate planning, according to Fidelity's 2025 Family and Finance Study, published in November and focused on families with at least $500,000 in investable assets. But those conversations aren't happening. Where's my inheritance? Boomer parents won't say. Boomer parents won't say. 2/3 of parents say they haven't told their adult children how they have an inheritance coming, nor how much they stand to inherit. Half of parents haven't discussed their net worth with their children. But more than half of adult children say they want to know how much they will inherit. Nearly all adult children, 95%, say they're ready to manage their inheritance. 1/4 of parents do not agree. If boomer parents are reluctant to talk about money and inheritance with their adult children, experts say, they may be carrying on a tradition passed down by their own parents. Their parents went through the Great Depression. So what's in their bones is you keep it close to your chest. You don't share what you have, said Ryan Victorin, the vice president of financial consultant at Fidelity. Many parents worry their adult children aren't good with money. In the Fidelity report, 2/5 said they lack confidence in their children's ability to manage debt. A similar share said they aren't confident their adult children can stick to a budget. Wealthy Americans may want their children to figure out personal finance on their own before they try to manage their inheritance. They want their kids, they want their grandchildren kids to kind of carve their own path, face adversity in life, learn good money management, Molechek said. Boomers, you get the money when I'm dead, they say. Other retirement research suggests a similar generational divide in attitudes about inheritance. In Northwestern Mutual's 2025 Planning and Progress study, 74% of millennials opined that it's very important to leave something for the next generation. Only 47% of the boomers agreed. A 2024 survey of wealthy Americans by Charles Schwab found that many young Americans want to pass wealth to their heirs while they're alive. Boomers would rather wait until they are dead. In the Schwab survey, 53% of millennials agreed with the statement, I want the next generation to enjoy my money while I'm still alive. Only 21% of the boomers shared that view. Aging, don't wait to share your estate plans. Aging parents may be reluctant to talk about money and death with their adult children. But if you don't have that talk, retirement planners say, you risk leaving your heirs in a tough spot after you die. They may struggle to identify your assets and debts and to divine what you intended to do with them. I think it's important for parents to sit down and at least give them an overview of their estate plan, says Zenelia Harris, a certified financial planner in Washington, D.C. Just make them aware. Sharing an estate plan with your kids doesn't mean you have to tell them the balance in every account. Instead, it can be an opportunity to explain what assets and investments you have, why you have them, and what you want their heirs to do with them. It's a chance to share your values. It doesn't have to be a one-and-done conversation, Harris said. And probably as your parents age, you want to have it annually. Talking to your children about an estate plan also creates an opportunity to get the plan in order. Victoria said, take some time to organize your finances, she said, before you summon your heirs to the table. If you have a financial advisor, Harris said, consider inviting them to join in a cross-generational talk about your estate. They can serve as a neutral arbiter. And they can also make sure the session doesn't turn into a negotiation about who gets what and when. Set up a conversation in a way that feels comfortable, Harris said. It's always good to have an independent third party.
And you're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on our Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Our time is 12:41. We're still in our money section. Next up, I have USA Today's column, Ask Johnny, is a health and human resources expert. Should I worry about AI stealing my job? Here's our first question to Johnny. My company recently introduced new artificial intelligence tools that are taking over big parts of our daily tasks. We're being asked to help implement and improve these tools, but it feels like we're training something that might eventually just replace us. Should I be worried about this? And it's asked by Katja. Here's Johnny's answer to her. Let me say this plainly. AI, it isn't coming for your job, but someone who knows how to use AI might. And no, that's not a threat. It's a reality check. The real shift happening right now isn't job elimination. It's job transformation. Your reaction, it's understandable. Every major technological change has triggered the same fear. We've seen this movie before, and it usually doesn't end the way people expect. Think about Hidden Figures, that story of human computers at NASA. When machines arrived, some worried their roles would disappear. Instead, the people who learned the technology, they paired it with expertise and then applied judgment, became more valuable, not less. Technology didn't replace them, it elevated them. And that is exactly what's happening now. The future of work isn't AI versus people. It's AI plus human intelligence. At SHRM, we call it the AI plus HI. AI can move fast, analyze data, and automate routine work. But what it can't do is think critically, exercise judgment, understand context, or lead with empathy. I'm all in for innovation, but no one wants a chatbot explaining why they met expectations. No, these are critical human strengths, and in an AI-enabled workplace, they matter more than ever. So now, let's talk about what really counts here. Your company is asking you to implement and improve these tools. That's not a warning sign, it's a vote of confidence. Organizations, they don't ask people they plan to sideline to help shape their future. They ask the people who understand the work, the risks, and the real-world impact. In other words, they're relying on you to make the technology smarter and more responsible. Now that said, strong employers also have responsibilities to the people. AI adoption should not be a guessing game. Employees deserve clarity about how their roles will evolve, what skills will matter next, and how the organization plans to support learning and the development. The best companies, they don't just roll out new tools, they invest in their own people alongside them. But here's the part that's on you. Don't wait. Start building your skills now. Learn how to use these tools. Learn how to make them work. Understand where they add value and where human judgment must remain the front and center. Become that person who can question the output, spot the flaws, and then turn information into insight. The people who thrive aren't the ones who resist the tool. They're the ones who master the tool. So bottom line is, the real risk, it isn't helping to implement AI. The risk is just standing still while the world of work continues to evolve. Yes, some jobs will disappear, but new roles, responsibilities, and opportunities, they're being created every day. Your value has never been in your routine work. It's how you think, how you adapt, and lead through change. That's the part no machine can automate.
Barnes & Noble and Buc-ee's are taking over closing retail space. As we settle into the new year, retailers such as Barnes & Noble and Nordstrom Rack are planning for the future and opening new stores across the country. Last year, beloved retail giants shut down multiple locations. For example, Macy's said it planned to shutter around 150 locations. Other retailers such as craft store Jo-Ann Fabrics closed all of its stores permanently after filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. In total, there were about 4,100 store closures in 2025, reported Business Insider. Despite retailers closing thousands of locations in 2025, some businesses are growing their footprints in 2026. And here's what we know so far about the companies opening stores this year. Barnes & Noble to open more than 60 stores. Barnes & Noble, one of the largest booksellers in the country, plans to open dozens of locations across 10 states, according to USA Today's previous reporting. The retailer's locations will be located in the following states: Ohio, Texas, Florida, Illinois, Colorado, Washington, California, Virginia, Georgia, and Washington, D.C. Nordstrom Rack, a discount store, is also planning to expand. In 2026, it will open 14 stores across 10 states and will open the following cities: Sarasota, Florida, Encinitas, California, Elmwood, Louisiana, Knoxville, Tennessee, Plymouth, Massachusetts, Deptford, New Jersey, Orlando, Florida, Mansfield, Massachusetts, and Spokane, Washington, Pompano Beach, Florida, Williamsburg, Virginia, Tampa, Florida, Canton, Ohio, and Rockville, Maryland. Uniqlo, that's Uniqlo, opens nearly a dozen locations. Uniqlo is a Japanese clothing brand and store. Will also expand in the United States in the new year, according to Retail Dive. The store will be expanding in the following states: California, Illinois, Maryland, Massachusetts, New York, Washington, and Washington, D.C. Uniqlo will open 11 stores across 7 cities, including multiple locations in New York City and Chicago, according to Retail Dive. BJ's Wholesale Club will open around 8 locations in the new year, after opening 12 new locations in 2025. The wholesale store's new locations will be located in Foley, Alabama, Delray Beach, Florida, Selma, North Carolina, Chattanooga, Tennessee, Forney, Texas, Grand Prairie, Texas, Mesquite, Texas, and Fort Worth, Texas. Buc-ee's, more road trips will feature the face of the famous Beaver mascot, Buc-ee, as the Texas flagship gas station and convenience store set to open 3 new locations. The store, famous for its clean restrooms and beaver nuggets, will open new rest stops in the following locations: in Huber Heights, Ohio, Goodyear, Arizona, and San Marcos, Texas. And Ollie's, a discount retailer, plans to open 75 stores. Robert Helm, Ollie's Bargain Outlet's Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer, said, "Opening new stores remains our highest and best use of capital." And the investment that we made in accelerating growth really paid off.
Now, Walmart and PepsiCo face suit over prices. Class action alleges price fixing scheme. Walmart and PepsiCo have been accused in a lawsuit of participating in a decade-long price fixing scheme that allegedly involved the companies effectively raising the cost of Pepsi products across the country at retailers other than Walmart and reducing them at the big box store. Now, the proposed class action lawsuit filed in the Southern District of New York on December 15th alleges that the two companies have had a long-term agreement that grants Walmart preferential pricing on PepsiCo products. Now, that created a price gap, with the cost of Pepsi soft drink products being lowered at Walmart compared with other retail giants' competitors, according to this federal complaint. The lawsuit claims that the two companies broke antitrust laws, including the 1890 Sherman Antitrust Act, which seeks to bar companies from becoming monopolies and ban secret restrictions on competition and state antitrust laws, according to the filings. In an email statement to USA Today, Walmart said it was aware of the litigation and that it is committed to negotiating on behalf of its customers so it can deliver value and everyday low prices. Now, PepsiCo, in an email statement, said it cannot comment on pending litigation, but continues to operate in compliance with applicable laws and remains committed to providing all customers with fair, competitive, and non-discriminatory pricing, discounts, and promotional value, regardless of their size or their channel. So, here's what you need to know about the pending lawsuit against Walmart and PepsiCo. What does the lawsuit against Walmart and PepsiCo allege? The lawsuit alleges that PepsiCo has inflated the sale price of its soft drinks products at every single retailer other than its largest customer, Walmart, and it offered various monetary and promotional advantages to the store and not to its competing retailers. Many of the claims in the current lawsuit echo a now dropped federal case against PepsiCo. The Federal Trade Commission previously pursued a lawsuit against PepsiCo for allegedly violating the Robinson-Patman Act, which was a 1936 law that targets discriminatory pricing practices, but it ended in May of 25. Claims made from that FTC lawsuit are used in the current lawsuit against PepsiCo and Walmart, including that Pepsi allegedly provides its favored large big box retailer customer with promotional payments and allowances without making these equally available to that customer's competitors. Now, the lawsuit also claims that Pepsi has given Walmart data on competitor pricing and reduces and eliminates promotional support or increases wholesale prices that even further for Walmart's competitors when they threaten Walmart's prices at retail, which are paid by the consumers. The proposed class maintains that these alleged actions have hurt consumers who shop at retail stores other than Walmart for their Pepsi products. The complaint states that plaintiffs are seeking class action status for people across the U.S. who purchased Pepsi soft drink products at retail from any retailer that was other than Walmart starting on January 1st of 2015.
Well, we have some time here. We can go back and revisit a story about the killing in Minnesota. And could the ICE agent be charged in the killing? Prosecution by the state would be challenging. Many in Minnesota and across the country were outraged by the killing of Renee Nicole Good. But even if when the prosecutor concluded shooting was a crime, can they charge a federal immigration agent for something he did on the job? No, said Vice President Vance, who asserted the agent has absolute immunity. But the reality isn't so simple. Minnesota state prosecutors may in fact be able to prosecute the federal agent who shot and killed Good, though the pathway forward would come with special challenges. State officials announced January 9th they are collecting evidence surrounding her death, the signal they may consider bringing charges. The move comes after President Donald Trump and other White House officials suggested the shooting was justified. The state authorities said the FBI pulled out of a joint investigation. Though the Department of Justice hasn't announced whether it will bring charges, the hasty statements by White House officials opposing charges make federal prosecution seem highly unlikely, especially at a time when the lines between the Department of Justice and the White House are increasingly blurred. When you have the President, the Vice President, and the Secretary of Homeland Security all saying this was self-defense, there's zero chance that Pine Bondi and the Department of Justice will move forward with prosecution at the federal level instead of formal prosecutor. At a news conference, Minnesota's Attorney General Keith Ellison, the top prosecutor from Minneapolis-Hennepin County, Most said they haven't yet made a charging decision when it comes to Good's death and will wait until the evidence is evaluated. I think ultimately they will choose to prosecute, said it. It has been pretty aggressive in these type of cases dating back to George Floyd. As tensions have flared over the Minneapolis death, federal agents shot and wounded 2 people during a traffic stop in Portland, Oregon. And here's why when authorities could pursue state charges but could also face challenges. One challenge to the Minnesota officials is they would likely have to prosecute the case outside of their home turf. There's a federal law allowing officers of federal agencies to move their cases to federal court when they're being prosecuted for something they did as part of their official responsibilities. And that's a significant disadvantage for state prosecutors, according to a criminal defense lawyer in New York City. It's a road game instead of having a home court advantage. In addition, state prosecutors would likely have to meet special legal standards to get the case to trial because they'd be prosecuting a federal agent. In that type of case, defendants are often argued they can't be prosecuted because of a constitutional provision, the Supremacy Clause, that puts federal law above state law. Federal courts have sometimes blocked state prosecutions under that provision, out of concern that state authorities are using their power to frustrate federal government from legitimately exercising its own powers. Murder and manslaughter charges could be in play. Even if they do decide to change the charges warranted, they are unlikely to bring a first-degree murder charge. That crime generally requires premeditation. He said state officials might consider a form of manslaughter or a lesser murder charge, which come with maximum penalties. It's a very tough job for the prosecutors. If the ICE agent ended up facing charges, he would likely argue he shot Good in self-defense. Minnesota allows officers to use deadly force if reasonable for them to believe that force will protect them or another person from great bodily harm. In this case, the agent may argue that Good appeared to be directing her SUV at him. Trump officials have highlighted video footage from the front of the SUV showing it shows movement in the agent's direction. Advocates for Good have pointed to the footage from the rear, which shows the vehicle turning as if to pass the agent and get away. Looking across multiple public videos, which both show both Good's handling of the vehicle, the wheel and movement of the SUV tires, Good is driving simultaneously rightward and forward as the agent stands to the left front side of her car. Then there are 3 brief sounds that may be bullet shots, as one as the agent points his gun at the left side front of the windshield, and then 2 more as he's pointing at the side window as the car drives away. They're trying to always spin this as an action of self-defense, said Mayor Jacob Frey of Minneapolis. He said, I haven't seen the video until everybody directly, that is, an expletive. But Bedrose said, as emotional as the case is, there's much more to be parsed out in terms of witness interviews and video analysis.
And you're listening to a reading of articles from our USA Today for Tuesday, January the 13th of 2026 on our Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We'll return to you for more readings just after this short break now. And your readers again today are Jody
and Alan Blackburn.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.
We'll continue now with our reading of articles from today's issue of USA Today. Your readers are
Jody.
and Alan Blackburn. It's on to the sports section. A column by Jarrett Bell. Alan dons Superman cape again. It's a battered, well-traveled, and playoff-tested cape that Josh Allen seems to put on when the going gets tough, and it still works. Allen, the rugged Buffalo Bills quarterback and reigning NFL Most Valuable Player, added to his legend to open the playoffs on Sunday, January 11th, at Everbank Stadium in Jacksonville. In a game that included Allen retreating twice to the medical tent on the sideline for injury evaluations. First, it was to check a possible concussion. Then he had an exam after twisting a knee. He sure stood tall at the end. Never mind that Allen came into the game nursing a foot injury. Forget that on his biggest completion of the game, just before the 2-minute warning, in the fourth quarter, it would never have happened if he had flinched. To connect with a 36-yard strike to Brandon Cooks, who ran a post pattern while Allen was forced to throw the ball off his back foot. The quarterback had to wait to absorb a blow to his midsection. Next thing you know, Allen was seen barreling 10 yards on the Bills' version of the tush push. Ever seen one of those rugby-style scrums move the pile so far? He set up his 1-yard winning score in a 27-24 verdict that just had to break the hearts of Jacksonville Jaguars and their rabid fans. This is what you get from the 6'5", 237-pound Allen, especially in the playoffs, and an NFL version of the Bionic Man. He's a fricking dog, Bills tight end Dawson Knox explained from his stall in the visitors' locker room. He's a warrior. I've never seen him miss more than a play or two at a time with trying to fight someone to get back on the field. No one probably fully understands what type of pain he's going through, but he makes it seem like it's nothing. You ask him if he's fine, he said, yeah, I'm good. But the dude's a warrior, man. That's what gets the guys going, and he makes us want to put everything out for him there as well. When Allen connected with Keon Coleman for a 36-yard completion in the second quarter, which set up his violent 2-yard touchdown rumble, he smashed his throwing hand off the helmet of one of his linemen. He grimaced, and they kept on ticking. For a brief period, some of his passes seemed to lose a little zip. Then again, maybe not so much. Allen completed 80% of his passes, 28 of 35 for 273 yards, with a 15-yard touchdown toss to Dalton Kincaid early in the fourth quarter. A pretty floater to the wide-open tight end in the left corner after he threw off the scent with a pump fake that baited the defense to react to a screen. And he ran for 33 yards and 2 other scores. He added another first. He became the lone player in NFL history with an 80% completion rate and multiple rushing touchdowns. He didn't commit a turnover either. Yet this wasn't about stats as much as it was about the grit. The Bills, who were 13-5, had to take the wild card route to the playoffs after the Patriots seized the AFC East crown that Buffalo had won for 5 consecutive seasons. And to get there, here they had to take all sorts of body blows and survive all sorts of adversity. The season started with a near miracle comeback against the Ravens. They survived a shootout against Tampa Bay. They came back bigger against the Bengals and at New England. Those could easily have been 4 losses. Allen, though, is the perfect leader, for example, for the Bills. And sure enough, it was demonstrated, again, with the season on the line. It trickles down from him in terms of the team's toughness, Bills coach Sean McDermott said. When your quarterback is that type of warrior, that type of competitor, from a leadership standpoint, it just flows through the whole team. We've got to get him as healthy as we can next week. It's not something we take lightly. He took some hits today, but there were times we protected him well. McDermott brought up a couple relevant stats. Allen was sacked once and hit just 3 times by a physical Jaguars defense. Credit the offensive line there, the coach added. Of course, there were other standouts critical of Buffalo's efforts. Cornerback Tre'Davious White broke up a pass near the goal line ahead for tight end Brent Strange on a deep seam route, forcing Jacksonville to settle for a field goal in the third quarter. Then White made the deflection in the final minute that was intercepted by Cole Bishop to seal the game. With newly minted NFL rushing champ James Cook held in check with 15 carries and only 46 yards, Khalil Shakir picked up the slack with a game-high 12 catches on 12 targets for 82 yards. And with linebacker Terrell Bernard sidelined with a calf injury, Shaq Thompson stepped back and into a starting role and snagged an early interception to go with his team-high 8 tackles. Typically, Allen was rather nonchalant when meeting the media afterwards. He certainly can take a bow for history that came with the latest effort. Fittingly, the Bills prevailed in a game that swung wildly in the fourth quarter, keeping with the flow Saturday's playoff openers and the topsy-turvy regular season. The lead changed 4 times in the fourth period, tied a postseason record. Al feels good, and at the same time, it just means we get another game. We got to find a way to put our best foot forward this week in practice and put together a good game.
Now the battered 49ers, they keep punching. Defending Super Bowl champion Eagles KO'd. The San Francisco 49ers may have suffered another rattling body blow in the NFC's final wildcard bout of this NFL postseason, but they still managed to deal the knockout punch to the reigning Super Bowl champs. On a blustery day in the city where Rocky was deified, the depleted and bloodied Niners, despite losing Pro Bowl tight end and captain George Kittle to an Achilles injury before halftime, emerged from their corner to defeat the Philadelphia Eagles 23-19. The haymaker came on All-Pro Christian McCaffrey's second touchdown catch of the fourth quarter, a 4-yard dart from quarterback Brock Purdy with just 2:54 to go. San Francisco will face top-seeded Seahawks in the Pacific Northwest next weekend, 2 weeks after losing to them 13-3 in Silicon Valley, a defeat that conferred home field advantage to Seattle. The 49ers persevered on a day largely spent without Kittle, and one when Ricky Pearsall, the club's most dynamic wideout, was inactive. They spent most of the season without star defenders Nick Bosa and Fred Warner, as well as rookie defensive lineman Mikael Williams, and a first-round pick last spring. A team that has lost 74 collective games to injuries to its Week 1 starters is now charged with overcoming its rested divisional rivals. But history is on San Francisco's side. In 4 previous trips to the playoffs under Shanahan, the Niners have never failed to advance at least as far as NFC title game and reach the Super Bowl twice. Eagles coach Nick Sirianni suffered his first playoff loss at home after winning his first 5 at Lincoln Financial Field. Now Philly's star-studded offense continued its disjointed pattern from throughout the season, with quarterback Jalen Hurts frequently off target and unable to rally the team on that final drive. It remains to be seen if much maligned offensive coordinator Kevin Patullo will retain his role.
Wish list for the new season. The PGA Tour tees off in Hawaii this week, and thinking these things new, old would be great. We're just making the turn on the decade, and that is the 2020s, and we're already seeing some incredible golf history made. This is a column by Adam Schupak. What would I like to see happen in 2026 on the PGA Tour? Glad you asked. When the season begins in Hawaii for potentially the last time, let's start off with a bang winner like Jordan Spieth. He hasn't won in more than 3 years, and the golf world is just better with him in the trophy hunt. He's shown some flashes of brilliance at Wailea, so why not end the winless drought right out of the gate? Others to get back in the winner's circle in 2026 include 45-year-old Adam Scott, since he last won in 2020 Genesis Invitational, Patrick Cantlay, who won last time in 2023 the BMW Championship, Shane Lowry, who last won in 2019 the British Open as an individual, and Webb Simpson, since 2020 at the RBC Heritage, and Sung Jae Im, 2021 the Shriners Children Open. The American Express will be its usual birdie fest, but here's hoping it won't be kryptonite for Scotty Scheffler. He's played there 5 times without a win, even missing the cut once, but could notch his 20th PGA Tour title. It wouldn't put it by him shooting a sub-60 round in the dome-like conditions. Scheffler will keep rolling in 2026, and he'll get renewed competition from Xander Schauffele, who was sidetracked by an early season injury in 2025, but showed he hasn't forgotten how to close with a fall victory in Japan. It wouldn't surprise me to see Schauffele win the Masters, which would mean both he and Scheffler could compete at the Grand Slam at the U.S. Open at Shinnecock. It had been 25 long years since Tiger Woods had achieved that feat before Rory McIlroy did so in 2025. Could we see it in back-to-back years? Wouldn't put it past Scheffler, but it'd be quite a story if he and Schauffele duked it out on the back nine Sunday on Long Island, and Phil Mickelson, who only needs the U.S. Open title too, gave chase. The other name who might make life at the tough for Scheffler is Ludwig Aberg. He's contended in his first 2 appearances at the Masters. I think his game could work at any of the majors. If he can tighten up his short game, I believe he's the guy to eventually dethrone Scheffler as world number one. Though it won't happen in 2026. Wouldn't it be cool if the Swede won the Farmers Insurance Open at Torrey Pines, where he won the 2025 Genesis Invitational? Even cooler, Torrey's always favored the Bombers, and there wouldn't be a lot of dry eyes if Gary Woodland won for the first time since 2019 U.S. Open after having surgery for a brain tumor. And I'd like to see J.J. Spaun prove 2025 wasn't a fluke, and for Keegan Bradley to play his way into the U.S. Open's U.S. President's Cup. Here's hoping Max Homa finds his mojo again. I want to see Billy Horschel and Sahith Theegala bounce back from injury-riddled years. I want to see FedEx Cup champion Tommy Fleetwood win a full field event in the U.S. and contend for the British Open back home in England. I want to see Johnny Kiefer, who won the money list on the PGA Tour of Americas and Korn Ferry Tour his first 2 years as a pro, make it the Tour Championship, and have a chance to win the FedEx Cup. I want to see a Monday qualifier win. Long live Monday qualifiers. I want to go a year without a press release informing me that Tiger had another surgery. Instead, let's see him win a few times on the PGA Tour Champions. And why not number 83 on the Big Tour? And while I'm making outlandish wishes, how about giving Charlie Sifford exemption into the Genesis Invitational to Charlie Woods? He's a few years older than Tiger was when he made his PGA Tour Riviera, and Charlie made the AGGA All-American team. And it's inevitable that a tournament is going to give him an exemption. Might as well be at the tournament his dad hosts in honor of the golfer he was named for. Would love to see Rory McIlroy add to his major total and leave little debate as to who is the greatest European player of the modern era. How about a young American emerges as a star for the President's Cup team, be it Michael Brennan, Luke Clanton, Michael Thorpe Jorgensen, or a player to be named later. I want an ace at 16 at the WM Phoenix Open, preferably late on Saturday afternoon, and a playoff to extend through the first quarter of the Super Bowl. Can we get a live look in the new Tour CEO, former NFL exec Brian Rolapp, as it's happening? I want 4 days of glorious sunshine at Pebble Beach. That may be too much to ask for. How about Maverick McNeely, whose dad was a regular at AT&T Pro-Am, making an early case for making the U.S. President's Cup again team? And here's hoping the Cognizant Classic has a single-digit winner. PGA National Resorts Champion Course played as a pushover last year, surrendering a 59 to Jake Knapp. That shouldn't happen. Good place for a first-time winner such as Max Greierman, who played there during his formative years. Ricky Fowler is eligible for the Arnold Palmer Invitational again, and here's hoping he shows up and takes the title. As for the opposite field Puerto Rico Open, let's see Rafa Campos, who skipped last year to play in the API as a sponsor invite over Fowler, who finally prevail at home. The big picture, I'm wishing for more of an open shop, and the concept of scarcity touted by the new boss at Global Home doesn't do away with too many long-running tournaments that are long embedded in the fabric of our community. Every decision doesn't have to be about the bottom line. Wishful thinking? Certainly, but that's the beauty of the new year. It's a season of new possibilities before history gets made.
And you're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on our Niagara Frontier radio reading service. Our time is 1:13. We're still in sports. Now we're going to talk about the NFL wild card playoffs. Now this is a long article with the winners and losers, so Alan and I will share. I'm going to start off. Unraveling champs come fully undone. Who says the NFL playoffs have to have a dull opening? The wild card round has produced its fair share of duds in recent years, with the expanded playoff field often yielding matchups that quickly proved to be as uneven as they appeared to be when the field was first set. But this season's postseason has been captivating throughout the weekend, with each of his first 4 tilts being decided by no more than 4 points. Sunday, January 11th, saw the Buffalo Bills prevail over the AFC South champions Jacksonville Jaguars before the injury-riddled San Francisco 49ers outlasted the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, to cap the night, the New England Patriots overwhelmed the Los Angeles Chargers, leaving only Houston Texans and Pittsburgh Steelers to claim that last divisional round spot on Monday. So, here are the biggest winners and losers from the Sunday action. First up, let's talk the winners. The Patriots defense. With New England hosting its first home playoff game in 7 years, it was only appropriate appropriate that Mike Vrabel's crew authored something of a throwback performance. The defense dictating terms hasn't exactly been the Patriots' calling card all season, but the unit coalesced and held the Chargers to just 207 total yards, a 1 for 10 mark on third downs, and a 0 for 2 red zone rate. And even though Milton Williams bloodied Vrabel, the coach probably wouldn't be bothered so long as the defensive tackle keeps turning in disruptive nights like this, as the marquee free agent signing netted 2 sacks and helped stymie the Bolts' rushing attack. Injuries to starting cornerbacks Christian Gonzalez on his head and Carlton Davis III on his toe bear watching for a group that will see the level of difficulty ratcheted up in the next round. But the bottom line was very encouraging for something of an unknown entity. And now we're still on winners. We have Drake May. No one will confuse his outing with that of fellow 2024 draft classmate Caleb Williams, whose scintillating fourth quarter emergence powered the Bears' rise over the Packers. But the Patriots quarterback also persevered through early challenges to find a late breakthrough. The second-year signal caller completed 11 of his 14 attempts after halftime, including a beautiful 28-yard throw to tight end Hunter Henry for the game's only touchdown. He also wisely took advantage of a weak spot in the Chargers' defense by repeatedly scrambling for big gains, picking up 66 yards on the ground in total. It was hardly a spotless showing, but it was encouraging that May was able to keep his composure in his first postseason game. Now we're on to Kyle Shanahan and Robert Saleh. There's likely no better NFL award debate than one for the Coach of the Year, even if the MVP showdown might be more heated. And while there are plenty of legitimate choices, it's difficult to argue that anyone overcame more than Shanahan, who weathered injury after injury to push those 49ers to the brink of home field advantage in the NFC, and now onto the divisional round. Of course, Shanahan's ability to navigate major personnel losses on offenses was already apparent, with his attack ranking 4th in yards per game in 2024, despite a wave of injuries. He showcased his creativity again as San Francisco seized a fourth quarter lead when receiver Juwan Jennings heaved a touchdown toss to running back Christian McCaffrey. But what put San Francisco over the top was the work that Saleh did to keep the defense together despite being without Nick Bosa and Fred Warner, among others. The group was by no means dominant against the Eagles, but it stepped up in key spots and overcame the complete lack of a pass rush to keep Philly in check. It's easy to see why so many franchises are eager to try to capture the Shanahan dynamic, and the ones with head coaching vacancies this offseason would be wise to give an extensive look at a possible second chance for Saleh. Now we are to the 49ers' surprise standouts. There were too many stellar performances from unlikely sources to single out any one key contributor from San Francisco, with top option Ricky Pearsall still sidelined. Demarcus Robinson paced the receiving corps with game-high 111 receiving yards on 6 catches. Veteran linebacker Eric Kendricks, who only signed to the team's practice squad in late November, played all 72 defensive snaps and had 10 tackles, while also clinching the game after his fourth down pass deflection. And the 49ers benefited from the stellar efforts from a number of less heralded young defensive players, including rookie defensive backs Upton, Stout, and Marquise Siegel. Now the NFC West. The division already stood alone in NFL history after becoming the first with 3 teams to clear 12 wins in the same season. Now it has 3 representatives in the divisional round, thereby guaranteeing at least 1 berth in the NFC Championship game. The foursome doesn't command the same level of attention as some of its counterparts with more visible fan bases, but it's readily evident that this group is without competition as the league's most formidable collection of all teams. And now we're still on winners. Quinyon Mitchell. Quite the weekend for the second-year Eagles cornerback. On Saturday, he was named an All-Pro after a regular season run that saw him continue his ascent as one of the league's top covermen. On Sunday, he nabbed 2 interceptions and forced a key fumble by Brock Purdy. As someone who isn't often tested by quarterbacks due to how closely he sticks with receivers, Mitchell still has yet to record a regular season interception, but now has 4 in the postseason. Now, of course, the individual accomplishments are probably cold comfort for a hyper-competitive player who no doubt was disappointed to have his sterling campaign end so unceremoniously. And now I'm going to let Alan take over with Josh Allen.
Josh Allen is another winner. the reigning MVP would have been subject to a lot of unfair narratives had the Bills come up short against the Jaguars. Instead, Allen will receive his proper due for a load-bearing performance that further differentiates the quarterback from even his most talented peers. In leading Buffalo to the franchise's first road playoff win in 33 years, Allen was essentially flawless, completing 28 of 35 passes and a touchdown. And he also frequently powered a ground game that couldn't seem to get going against Jacksonville's front. And he managed all this despite essentially becoming a one-man teaching hospital as he hurt his hand, took a blow to the head, and wrenched his knee in the early going. After watching the quarterback shoulder a heavily disproportionate burden all season long, the offense pulled off an admirable role reversal when Allen was literally propelled by his teammates on a 10-yard tush-push to set up the deciding score. Another winner, Tre'Davious White. The two-time cornerback was also beloved a figure in Buffalo for his myriad contributions in an initial 7-year run with the team. But the affinity for White among the Buffalo fan base should only grow after his outing on Sunday. Other than allowing a 3-yard touchdown, White was without blemish in coverage and recorded a season-high 3 passes defensed, including the tip to safety Cole Bishop that secured the victory. His play helped set the tone for a surprising day from a shorthanded defense that figured to be a vulnerability. It's been some time since White, who suffered a torn anterior cruciate ligament in 2021 and a torn Achilles in 2023. He has enjoyed this kind of show showing. But as Buffalo return now, remember more for his work to prepare first-round pick Maxwell Hairston, who missed the contest with an ankle injury suffered in the regular season finale. Another winner, Parker Washington. The 2023 sixth-round draft pick was long afterthought in the Jaguars' receiving corps, until he wasn't. Washington proved to be a vital piece in aerial attack, taking off in the second half of the season, wrapping the final 3 weeks with 19 catches for 347 yards. In his playoff debut, he posted more than half of Jacksonville's receiving yardage, and his 12 targets were more than double what any other player earned. There's plenty for Jacksonville to sort through at wideout with Travis Hunter coming back next fall. But Washington seems certainly nearly essential to ensuring Trevor Lawrence doesn't drop off from his late surge. Another winner would be the Houston Texans, who won last night over the Pittsburgh Steelers. Losers, Justin Herbert. The logical endpoint for a campaign in which the Chargers offense was derailed by bookend offensive tackles Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt being lost for the season. Still, there was a distinct sense of discomfort that came with watching Herbert be repeatedly pummeled yet again to the tune of 6 sacks. And as Herbert's 3.24 second average time to throw marks the third longest of his career, according to Next Gen Stats, in what was perhaps a response to his receiver's complete inability to separate. Why then weren't there more schemed looks to get Ladd McConkey involved after the wideout served as lone bright spot in last year's playoff drumming by Texans? Herbert still deserves some of the blame for being repeatedly off the mark and out of sorts in what might go down as his most worrisome display in the postseason. Another loser, Nick Sirianni of the Eagles. The Eagles' offense frequently misfired Sunday night, not due to issues of play calling, but execution. That should still be a mighty concern to Sirianni, a big-picture coach who couldn't seem to push any of the right buttons in his team's disappointing Super Bowl defense this season. Another loser, A.J. Brown of the Eagles. Receiver Brown would finish with just 3 catches for 25 yards. And George Kittle of the 49ers needed a fresh start on the injury front. The 49ers needed a fresh start on the injury front. Now, Kittle was carted off with an apparent torn Achilles, blowing a hole in San Francisco's game plan.
And now I'm going to switch you over to baseball, MLB. Bregman signing, it changes outlooks. Alex Bregman wasn't the top prize on the MLB free agent this winter. In fact, the top 3 targets in USA Today Sports' pre-winter rankings, they still remain available. But Bregman's signing with the Chicago Cubs will have significant ripple effects through the game. Here's the winners and losers of Bregman agreeing to a 5-year, $175 million contract to call Wrigley Field home. They're going to start with the winners, Alex Bregman. Nicely played. When the anvil of the draft pick compensation was attached to Bregman's back last winter, he did not find a home until spring training camps had opened, when he agreed to a 3-year, $120 million contract to the Boston Red Sox. The 2 opt-outs in the deal ensured that he'd be able to try the market again without the dreaded compensation pick accompanying him. Now Bregman's 2-year free agency gambit, it looks like this. 6 years, $215 million. He received the highest annual salary in the Cubs' history and the largest on the market so far this winter. Now still on winners, Scott Boras. The man always gets his revenge. It certainly takes a certain mindset to be a Boras client, where one where abundant patience and confidence in your ability to perform are paramount. And after a handful of winters where some of the Uber agent's finest clients have been frozen out, all are finding their happily ever afters. Still on winners, Bo Bichette. No, he's not a Boras client, but the erstwhile Toronto Blue Jays infielder is probably smiling like one. When the Cubs weren't exactly a mystery team in the Bregman sweepstakes, his signing there comes as a moderate surprise and certainly amps up the pressure on the Red Sox to fill the Bregman-sized hole in their lineup. Still on winners, SEC baseball honks. While Bregman will have the highest salary on the Cubs, he doesn't quite have the largest contract. That belongs to Dansby Swanson, who will gross $177 million over 7 years. And that's just the latest installment of a saga of two guys with a history of one-upping each other, who will now share the left side of the infield. And now we're on to the losers, Boston Red Sox. Tough one, man. We were fairly stunned a year ago when the Red Sox broke out of several years of long winter's naps to sign Bregman and trade for Garrett Crochet, who finished second in the American League Cy Young Award voting. Their 3-year playoff drought ended with a spirited 3-game wildcard series defeat to the Yankees. That seemed like a jumping-off point, only for Bregman to bolt, reportedly for just $10 million more than the Red Sox offered. Now the Red Sox lineup looks way too thin once you get past the first 5 or so spots, especially since budding star Roman Anthony won't have a Bregman-like companion at the top of it. Still on losers, Alex Bregman's statistics. For a man who peppered Houston's Crawford boxes and then Fenway Park's Green Monster to post an .846 career OPS, Wrigley Field will decidedly be a tougher hang. Suddenly, Bregman's pull-side dominance will have to contend with Wrigley's capricious wins. It's well worth it for the Cubs to make that investment, but the back of Bregman's baseball card might not be so pretty going forward. And last now on the losers, we have Matt Shaw. The Cubs were somewhat Red Sox-esque in their inability to land marquee free agents and instead tout to the upside of their farm system products. But Bregman's signing shows it's not time to wait around for the kids to grow up. So what does that mean for Shaw? He took modest steps forward on both sides of the ball as his rookie season proceeded, producing 3.1 WAR in 126 games, though with a .226 average and 98 adjusted OPS. That doesn't mean there's no future for Shaw in Wrigleyville. Second baseman Nico Horner is a free agent after this season, and Shaw could slide there in 2027 or sooner should the Cubs decide to deal Horner for, say, pitching help. Or it could be Shaw dangled in trade talks. Either way, it's clear the Cubs had no patience to count on Shaw's development proceeding in a non-linear fashion.
Now comes the hard part for U.S. figure skaters. Heading into the 2026 U.S. Figure Skating Championships, there existed the very real prospect that the United States would be selecting the greatest American skating team to ever compete at the Olympic Games. Coming out of the national championships, that potential was affirmed. Almost all the top skaters did their jobs. The team is strong and deep, and with medal favorites in 4 of 5 events, the skaters aren't just leaving the nationals, they're storming out of the place. Now comes the hard part. In less than 4 weeks, the Milano Cortina Olympics begin. There are some significant questions. Can Ilya Malinin continue to dominate the men's competition and win a second consecutive American Olympic gold after Nathan Chen's victory in 2022? The answer is almost certainly yes. And then again, skating is a slippery sport, and the pressure on the 21-year-old quad god will be immense. Still, it's Malinin's event to lose. Can the Americans do what they are expected to do and glide to a win in the team event, which kicks off the figure skating competition in Milan? It would be stunning if they did not. Can ice dancers Madison Chalk and Evan Bates, 7 times national champions, finally win a medal in the event they have graced with their presence for years? The answer to that is yes. They almost certainly will, either gold or silver. And the women? The United States has selected its best women's team in nearly a quarter century, since 2002. But gold, silver, and even bronze are not guaranteed in a strong field of competitors from Japan and Russia. If things go spectacularly well, the United States has a fighting chance to win 4 of the 5 gold medals that will be given out in Italy. The previous best performances for the Americans at the Olympics, 2 golds each, all the way back in the 56 games, in the 60 Olympics when there were only 3 Olympic figure skating events. To be in this position, U.S. skaters had to come in on top of their game at the national championships, and by and large they did. This past week has been American skating at its best. U.S. figure skating CEO Matt Farrell said, after everything on a Sunday afternoon, and nothing was more impressive than the way the top U.S. women skated. In the short program and again to the long, one after another performed flawlessly. They were talented, they were resilient. They sent a message that the 3-member U.S. women's skating team is truly a team, not just a collection of individuals, which could play quite well in the pressure cooker of the Olympics.
And you're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on our Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Our time is now just 1:30. I'm going to take you over to our lifestyle section. And my first article is under the heading of Stage. Carrie Coon returns to Broadway in the creepy production Bug, B-U-G, Bug. Whatever you do, don't read this review. We're kidding, of course. Even still, we'd like to help preserve some of the squirmy sensations of Bug. It's a jaw-dropping, skin-crawling thrill ride that's best enjoyed if you just go in blind. If you're spoiler-averse, don't say we didn't warn you. Now, masterfully constructed and told with pitch-black humor by actor and playwright Tracy Letts, this incendiary thriller explores the paranoid underbelly of conspiracy theorists, a topic that has only become more queasily relevant. Bug, it premiered in London 30 years ago, and it was adapted into a 2006 film that starred Michael Shannon and Ashley Judd. But the play has never swarmed Broadway until David Cromer's nervy new production, which opened January 8th at the Samuel Friedman Theater. The formidable Carrie Coon, she returns to Broadway for the first time since 2012. She delivers yet another chameleonic turn as Agnes. Now, she's a terminally lonely waitress puttering around her dingy Oklahoma motel room where she numbs herself with drugs and booze. Although she receives some visitors, her lesbian biker pal RC and an abusive ex-husband Jerry, Agnes mostly lives out her days in a grief-stricken haze until she meets Peter, a Gulf War veteran who may or may not be on the lam. Now, for better or worse, this play is split into 2 acts. Presumably, so scenic designer Takeshi Kata can flood the stage with tinfoil hat doodahs and whatnots during the intermission. Now, as a result, some of the momentum is lost. But now of the supporting cast, which also includes Randall Arney, Angstrom shines brightest as the fiercely protective RC, who gradually comes to realize that her friend's self-destructive tendencies have warped into something far more alarming. Now, it goes without saying that Bug belongs to Coon, of course, whose transfixing tour de force is reason enough to snap up a ticket immediately. This 3-time Emmy nominee is as ferocious and fragile as you would imagine, and a final monologue that makes you feel empathy for Agnes, who desperately grasps for answers in her false new reality. While lesser actors might veer into overwrought hysterics, Coon creates a character who is fully lived in and believable, like the very best art or a pesky insect. It's the kind of performance that just burrows deep down into your soul.
Okay, we spy stars on a couple's night out and more. Sunday's 83rd Golden Globes Award were all about celebrating the year's best in film and TV, with one battle after another and Netflix's Adolescence dominating the night with 4 major troopers apiece. But beyond the wins, the ceremony on January 11th doubled as Hollywood's most glamorous date night. Star couples included Timothée Chalamet and Kylie Jenner, as well as newlyweds Selena Gomez and Benny Blanco. And they turned the Globes into a sweet showcase of romance and PDA. And here's how Hollywood's power couples celebrated Globes night and what else the viewers didn't see on the CS broadcast hosted by Nikki Glazer. Chalamet and Jenner are the supreme couple of awards season. Jenner didn't join Chalamet on the Globe's red carpet, but made a smiling, glamorous ballroom entrance in her gold sequin gown to join Marty Supreme table just off stage. And here's a picture of them looking romantically at one another's eyes. The spot was so popular with star visitors that it caused a major traffic jams in tight quarters. When Wicked for Good star Ariana Grande came by and another guest stepped on her gown, leading Jenner to think it was her chair. "Oh my God, I thought that was me," Jenner proclaimed. Even with visitors in the table conversation, Chalamet and Jenner spent many moments holding hands beneath the table, laughing together and whispering to each other. Chalamet kissed his partner of 3 years before accepting his award for Best Actor, where he told Jenner, "I love you" again from an awards podium, the second time in 7 days. At the evening's end, Chalamet led his love through the crowd by her hand. Gomez and Blanco start awards love early. Gomez and Blanco, who were married in September, were the first couple in the Beverly Hills Hilton Hotel ballroom, taking a seat while workers were still polishing the final wine glasses. The two were often engrossed in their own conversation at an empty table as the room filled. The influx included only Murders in the Building co-stars Steve Martin and Martin Short, who were seen visibly making Blanco burst out laughing with their shenanigans. During a commercial break, however, Blanco cozied up on Gomez's shoulder romantically, and here they're shown looking at the camera, close to it, not looking particularly romantic. Sarah Wiley is sending Noah on vacation after Pitts season 2. The Pitts star Noah Wiley attended the show with his wife of 12 years, Sarah Wiley. After winning Best Actor for the HBO medical series, which also won Best Drama, Wiley talked about the vacation his spouse will send him on once he completes his arduous season 2 filming in January. "I don't know where she's going to send me, but you better believe she's going to send me somewhere," Wiley said backstage. "I'm not usually good company for a little while after we finish." Making more room for trophies while shooting the sophomore season of an HBO Max show is not easy for the TV veteran. "It's a little more distracting trying to land this massive plane while taking bows for the first season's work," he said. Graham's life is complete because of a Snoop Dogg compliment. Adolescent star Stephen Graham, stoked about the trophy for Best Actor in a limited series, clutched in his hand, counted more than one win at the Globes, and one his kids might be more enthusiastic about. "I met Snoop Dogg, and he shook my hand," the British actor gushed. "He looked me right in the eyes. I could see his eyes because he had his glasses on, and he just said, 'You're a blank gangster.' He saluted the press room with his nude hardware. 'My life is complete. Thank you.'" Globes are good poaching ground for the studio guest appearances. Seth Rogen's Kool-Aid film won a fictional trophy in season 1 of The Studio. Then, in a moment of reality and imitating the art, the Apple TV show earned Rogen his first ever Golden Globe, as well as a win at the Best TV Comedy for Musical.
And I'm continuing with the Golden Globes, the best and worst moments you might have missed. Was that one of the best Golden Globes awards in years? The ceremony, which saw One Battle After Another and Hamnet take the top film awards, got dopamine boosts from the buoyant return of host Nikki Glaser, as well as buzzy reunions between the heated rivalry stars Connor Story and Hudson Williams, and The Secret Life of Bees favorites Queen Latifah and Dakota Fanning. So here are some of the highs and lows from this year's Golden Globes. First up, we're starting with the best. Glaser mocks the DOJ, CBS News, and DiCaprio in her monologue. The comedian made a dazzling return to the Golden Globe stage with a razor-sharp opening monologue, ribbing everything from Wicked for Good to Jennifer Lawrence to Netflix's acquisition of Warner Brothers. "Let's get down to business," Glaser said at the top of the show. "We'll start with the bidding for Warner Brothers at $5. Do I hear $5? The two-time Globes host then took shots at CBS News and the infamous Jeffrey Epstein list. Glaser proceeded to take playful shots at megastars, including Timothée Chalamet, George Clooney, Leonardo DiCaprio, quipping that the latter has accomplished so much before your girlfriend even turned 30. Now on to the best. Still, Taylor show's Party in the Back honors Little Brown Girls. In the first big upset of the night, Teyana Taylor took the supporting actress trophy over Amy Madigan for her performance as the dauntless vigilante Perfidia Beverly Hills in One Battle After Another. "Wait till you see my party in the back," Taylor said through the tears as she walked on stage, turning to show off her diamond-encrusted thong with a bow revealed by her very low back dress. The actress and singer urged her kids at home to tune into the awards show. "You better be off those darn phones and you better be watching me right now." She thanked the movie's director, Paul Thomas Anderson, for "your vision, your trust, and your brilliance. My gratitude is endless, and I love you so much." She ended her speech with a tribute to "my brown sisters and the little brown girls watching tonight. Our softness is not a liability. Our depth is not too much. Our light does not need permission to shine. We belong in every room we walk into. Our voices matter and our dreams deserve space. Now here's a worst, the playlist. Listen, we love that the Globes wanted to retire the standard incidental music in between the speeches, but some orchestral tunes might have been a touch classier than the abrasive DJ set that blared throughout the show. Sentimental Value star Stellan Skarsgård accepting Best Supporting Actor to the tune of Usher's Yeah, one battle after another's filmmaker Paul Thomas Anderson walking on stage to LMFAO's Party Rock anthem? This is a Hollywood awards show, not a frat party. Let's save the top 40 for after. But there was an exception, Macaulay Culkin walking in to present to The Return of Mac, which felt appropriate for his first Globes appearance in 35 years. Here's a best moment. Drescher pokes fun at Nikki Glazer's annoying voice. Early in the show, Glazer returned to the show to sing an extremely off-key tribute to Marty Supreme before one of the film's stars, Fran Drescher, exasperatedly cut her off. You have to stop the singing, the nanny icon said. Your voice is so annoying. Well, that means a lot coming from you, Glazer deadpans back. Here's another best moment. Byrne explains her husband's reason for missing the show. The bridesmaids and spy, funny woman, appeared to be genuinely stunned as she accepted her award for Best Actress in a musical or comedy for If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You, in a pitch-black motherhood dramedy. Of course, I didn't prepare anything, she said as she got on stage. I didn't even sing in this movie. This is such a shock. She thanked the writer and the director for making this low-budget film. She also shouted out to her two young sons and her husband, actor Bobby Cannavale. I want to thank my husband, Bobby, who could not be here because we're getting a bearded dragon. And he went to a reptile expo in New Jersey, she says. She laughs. So thank you, baby. Here's a worst moment. Pin dropping this year's nominees. Sure, it's fun to imagine that we're all whining and dining at the Beverly Hilton with the Hollywood elite, but for the second year in a row, the Globes made the bizarre decision to mark where the actors are sitting with a smattering of Google Maps type pins all around the ballroom. So the bird's eye view is neither illuminating nor appealing to look at, and it actually makes you feel like you're an outsider rather than less. Folks at home likely would be much happier if the producers parked the camera on Jacob Elordi or Ariana Grande instead. And here's their final moment. It's a best. Cheadle surprises Ocean's 11 co-star Clooney. Clooney began to present the final award of the night for Best Motion Picture Drama when Cheadle sided up right alongside him. The actors had co-starred in the Ocean's trilogy and Steven Soderbergh's Out of Sight. Cheadle assured Clooney that he was just there for the moral support, only to rib the J. Kelly star for not receiving a standing ovation, as their friend and co-star Julia Roberts did. We're all winners here, Clooney said dryly, before Cheadle pointed out that Timothée Chalamet was just 3 years old the last time Clooney won. Clooney has won 3 acting Globes, the last for Descendants, and that was in 2012. Knock 'em dead, Batman, Cheadle cracked, as he ended the bit with a spank on Clooney's derriere.
So we're out of life features, so we're going back to the national scene as Trump assails windmills and wind energy as losers. President brags to oil executives about opposition. President Donald Trump bragged about his opposition to wind turbines during a meeting with oil executives at the White House on January 9th, reiterating his long-stated dislike of windmills. In case you people don't know, I'm not much of a windmill person, the president told the oil executives. We have not approved one windmill since I've been in office, and we're going to keep it that way. My goal is to not let any windmills be built. They're losers, Trump said. He railed against wind farms in Europe and Palm Springs, California, and falsely asserted a lack of wind turbines in China. Europe is putting windmills all over the place and losing a fortune, the president said. They're destroying their country. They're destroying the beautiful landscapes, the beautiful everything. Go take a look at Palm Springs, California, and take a look at what that looks like, said Trump, who has railed against wind turbines there for at least 13 years. Looks like a junkyard of steel. Just all about all the windmills are made in China, Trump said. They make them and sell them to suckers like Europe and suckers like the United States before. All you have to do is say to China, how many windmill areas do you have in China? So far, they're not able to find any, he said. They use coal and they use oil and gas and some nuclear. Not much, but they don't have windmills. And the word is China has, in fact, become a world leader in the use of wind turbines to produce energy, according to the U.S. Department of Energy, as opposed to what Trump had said. The Energy Department reported In 2025, that China added 79 gigawatts of wind generation capacity. In 2024, growing its capacity by 18%. Its total wind capacity had reached 521 gigawatts. China had 138 offshore wind farms operating as of April 2025. It led the world in new offshore wind installations in 2024 for the seventh year in a row, according to the Global Offshore Wind Report by the Global Wind Energy Council, International Trade Association. It has one of the highest expansion rates of any major market and was expected to install more than 87 gigawatts of wind power in 2025, and Trump said they didn't have any. Wind and solar power are two of the fast-growing energy and sectors of the United States and produce as much as 17% of the country's electricity in 2024, according to the Department of Energy. Land-based wind turbines produce 10% of the United States electricity, the vast majority on private land, American Clean Power and Industry Group reported. Wind, solar, and batteries have been responsible for close to 95% of all new energy capacity in the United States, said Jesse Lee, a senior advisor at Climate Power, an advocacy organization devoted to climate change and clean energy. Since taking office a year ago, the president has been successful at stomping out new wind and solar production in many ways, Lee said. Clean Power criticized Trump for his meeting with the oil industry, which the advocacy group has donated hundreds of millions to influence the campaigns of Trump and other Republicans, while taking a sledgehammer to the homegrown clean energy industry, which would actually lower energy costs for Americans. Trump has drawn the ire of climate change and environmental advocacy group early in the week when he announced the United States would withdraw from 66 treaties, conventions, and organizations, including the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. During the first year of his second administration, Trump declared a national energy emergency, but also issued a flurry of executive orders and directives limiting new wind and solar projects and took aim at renewable solar subsidies and incentives. One executive order temporarily halted offshore wind energy lease sales in federal waters and paused approvals, permits, and loans for both offshore and onshore wind. The administration has halted 5 ongoing projects off New England and faces lawsuits from companies that already had made significant investments in new wind energy before their projects were stopped. Federal officials were also directed to review the environmental impact of wind projects on wildlife and consider the economic costs associated with intermittent generation and the effects of subsidies on the viability of the wind industry. Lee said Trump has done his very best to ban wind and solar at a time when electricity demand is going through the roof because of data centers and AI. In July 2025, the U.S. electricity peak demand set new records highs twice, according to the Energy Department. Trump vowed to continue efforts against wind energy during the meeting with executives on January 9th, calling turbines the worst form of energy. So we don't approve, and I've told my people we will not approve windmills, he said. Maybe we get forced to do some because some stupid person in the Biden administration agreed to do something years ago.
And now I'm going to take you back to the sports section. We're going to talk about the USA figure skaters and the Olympics again that Alan had read about. This is citizenship issues affect final team decisions. U.S. figure skating had to weigh every possible scenario when determining which 16 skaters would represent Team USA at the 26 Winter Olympics. Its selection committee met to deliberate after each discipline finished their final segments at the Nationals. Committee members considered each skater's recent body of work, reviewing data points and strength of performances. After 2 days of deliberations, joyous reveals, and tough conversations, U.S. figure skating made official its roster, a group of athletes poised for medal podiums in Milano Cortina. Every one of us can agree that we have some phenomenal athletes as part of Team USA going into Milan, says Justin Dillon, the USFS Chief High Performance Officer. The meeting for each discipline used up all allotted 90 minutes. The committee also selected who would compete at World Championships and 4 continents, but that doesn't mean every decision for the Olympic team was difficult. For example, the women's team was straightforward with Amber Glenn, Alyssa Liu, and Isabeau Livito, making it clear that they were the trio after finishing with gold, silver, and bronze at nationals. But the same could be said for top male skater Ilya Malinin, who is the gold medal favorite in Milano. But the challenging decisions were around which two men would join Malinin. Going into the weekend, veteran and fan favorite Jason Brown was penciled in for a spot, but that changed after he struggled mightily in his free skate. The performance plummeted him all the way to 8th place and then took him out of the running, landing him instead now as an alternate. As a result, the final two spots went to Andrew Torgashev and Maxim Naumov, who finished second and third respectively at nationals. USFS uses the past 2 seasons to determine who gets the nod, but Dillon noted that the U.S. Championships is one that is weighted the most heavily. Torgashev put on an impressive free skate that rocketed him from 5th in the standings after a short program to 2nd overall with 267.62 points. Naumov turned in an emotional short program and a solid enough free skate to total 249.16 points. The decision on the 3 ice dance pairs, that followed the same pattern. 7-time champs Madison Chock and Evan Bates were the obvious selection, with the other podium teams Emilia Zingas and Vadim Kosnik and Christina Carrera and Anthony Ponomarenko earning the other 2 spots. Pairs is more complicated. The back-to-back champions, Alyssa Efimova and Misha Mitrofanov, didn't qualify because Efimova from Finland didn't obtain her U.S. citizenship in time, despite a last-ditch effort to do that. Then, on Friday, January 9th, USFS CEO Matt Farrell said the pair's selections would be determined Saturday morning and that Efimova needed her citizenship approved by that time. The meeting ended or they would not be selected. Now, ultimately, the uncertainty took them out of the conversation. The process is very long, complex, and inexact science, and at the end of the day, there is just not anything tangible enough to make it feel real, even up to the last second, despite heroic efforts from a lot of different parties, Farrell said. Now, second place Ellie Kam and Daniel O'Shea earned an Olympic berth alongside 4th place Emily Chan and Spencer Akira Howe, who had strong free skate propel them up the standings. Chan and Howe, who finished 4th at nationals, earned the Olympic spot over the 3rd place team of Katie McBeath and Daniil Parkman, because Parkman, who is from Russia, didn't have American citizenship. Dillon noted Parkman wasn't as close to obtaining citizenship as Efimova. McBeath and Parkman are just starting the process, so they knew coming into this that it was not a consideration, he said. Now, after all the debates and the meetings and discussions, came the new part of the process, telling the athletes of the decision. Previously, they had received the news via email or text, but officials felt this warrants a more personal touch. So this year they brought in the skaters to hear the news in person, both those who made it and those who did not. The men were in the final group to learn their fates. Those conversations happening mid-Sunday morning in St. Louis, about 3 hours before the team was publicly then revealed. There are many phenomenal aspects of the people who make up this team, and the last few days have brought some memorable moments to make this Olympic send-off truly special. It's just as good as it gets for the future of the sport, Farrell said. All eyes can be on an Olympic team for the U.S. that will make all of us proud. And they have a beautiful picture. You can see the ice rink. All the skaters are wearing their Team USA jackets, and they're in a round huddle, and they're all hugging each other. Their arms are around every person. And it reads, Team USA members gather on the ice after the announcement of the Olympic team during the 2026 U.S. Figure Skating Championships on January 11th that was held at the Enterprise Center.
And here's the Lifeline column. Royals report, Princess Kate. Princess Kate marked her 44th birthday on January 9th on Instagram with a heartfelt tribute to the natural world. The latest video in her Mother Nature series, the post shows the British Royal outdoors dipping her hand that is adorned with Princess Diana's famous ring into a babbling brook as she delivers an emotional ode. She said, I find myself reflecting on how deeply grateful I am, for the rivers within us flow with ease, fears washed away. She narrates, they cleanse and purify, come to peace with our tears, and discover what it means to be alive. Be at one with nature, a quiet teacher, and a soft voice that guides, in memory helping us to heal. In January 2025, Kate revealed she was in remission after a bout of preventive chemotherapy to treat cancer. Who's celebrating their birthday today? Musician Trevor Rabin, yes, turns 72. Actor Julia Louis-Dreyfus is 65. Singer Trace Adkins, 64. Actor Penelope Ann Miller is 62. Actor Patrick Dempsey is 60. Actor Suzanne Cryer, 59. Actor Tracy Bingham, 58. Writer-producer Shonda Rhimes, 56. Actor Ross McCall, 50. Actor Michael Pina is 50. Actor Orlando Bloom is 49. TV personality meteorologist Ginger Z is 45. Actor Liam Hemsworth is 36. And actor Natalia Dyer is 30. And here's the horoscopes. Aries, who do they think they're messing with? Mars clash with Chiron has you fired up. Use that passion appropriately. Taurus, you can't run from your problems, Taurus. As Mars and Chiron clash, the only way out is through. Gemini, quick to cut them off, you see a red flag and you're ready to block. Cancer, frustrated with a partner, trying to fix their problem might be what they need. Leo, questioning your direction, you're working hard but feeling stuck. Getting unstuck requires a leap of faith. Virgo, it's all fun and games until someone gets attached. Romantic anxieties flare as Mars and Chiron clash. Libra, expected to come to the rescue again? Loved ones trust you to get the job done, but you're feeling used. Scorpio, straining to find a solution? You're working yourself up over nothing as Mars and Chiron clash. Sagittarius, in a shame spiral? Someone accuses you of acting selfishly as Mars and Chiron clash. So what? Capricorn, facing a familiar conflict? You're ready to battle as Mars and Chiron clash. Change tactics instead. Aquarius, a passing stranger criticism opens an old wound as Mars and Chiron clash. You thought you had gotten past this. In Pisces, a colleague calls out your values as Mars and Chiron clash. Your first instinct, make them pay. Reel that anger in. Well, you've been listening to a reading of USA's Today for Tuesday, January 13th of 2026. We read USA Today a weekday at noontime. And for more information, you can call 821-5555. Your readers today have been
Jody
and Alan Blackburn.
If you or people you know shop at any of the Dash's supermarkets, please save Dash's register tapes for radio reading. Our agency receives $2 for every $100 in Dash's register tapes. Radio reading has raised thousands of dollars so far. Anyone can drop off their Dash's tapes to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, between William and Clinton Streets. Or Dash's tapes can be mailed to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, New York, 14227. Any questions on Dash's tapes for radio reading? Call us at 716-821-5555, and thanks for caring. Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have episode number 9 of Mark Twain by Ron Chernow. Following that, at 3 o'clock is National Geographic, and at 4 o'clock, a re-airing of today's Buffalo News. Stay with us. The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision,